Let's walk through how I won gold at the Good Fight Submission Only tournament. Hey, I'm Kason, by the way. My first match was against Bruce Banner. I ran off the mat so fast when my name was called and completely forgot to take off my Luffy shirt I was wearing. You gotta remember, I was there for like several hours. I worn it like 2 or 3 different times just waiting for my name to be called. I was so anxious but super excited. I start seated and immediately start harassing his hands and legs. I win the hand fighting battle by grabbing a 2-on-1 and pull him in to engage my guard. I feel like this guy's leading a lot with his head and he's kind of giving me the angle I'll need to take his back. I do take note of this and come back to it later with a response. He forces half guard, and I do everything I can to deny this guy of control of my head. Probably one of the biggest improvements I made over the past 1.5 years is my half guard game. It seemed like before I was hardly utilizing my frames well. I rarely even used a knee shield. I thought butterfly half was just like halfway of getting your guard passed, pretty much. I would get smashed all the time in the gym and use lockdown to try to slow my opponent down, but all I was doing was letting them lay flat on top of me and get me exhausted. Now I look at half guard as an advantageous position for the guy on the bottom as long as he's staying to his side and keeping proper frames in. Some people teach against low knee shield with locked feet, but this is actually an awesome position to keep distance between your hips as long as you keep your top heel covered by your bottom foot. This will prevent your legs from being smashed, unlike if you had them locked the other way. When you have disciplined frames in half guard, it gives you the space that you need to attack. I use the space of my frames here to attempt a triangle, then switch to an omoplata, then back to a triangle again. This guy was fresh and super strong, so I couldn't have even hoped to have finished this from here. The guy did a great job thumb posting inside my knee, so it's time to go back to plan A. I go back to harassing his near side wrist, and he goes for this wild knee slide, which gives me the perfect opportunity to take his back. I start by controlling the far hip, then build up to a seatbelt for better control, and wait for him to go to turtle. He was smart by trying to keep my top hook from coming in, but he gets lazy with it trying to come up to his knees and tries to hit a misdirection. Because I felt relatively high on his upper back, it was important for me to switch to a double under chest lock to keep myself from sliding off just in case he decides to tripod. Because I had double unders with a chest lock, I had to adjust my head position so he can't just place his head to the mat and be halfway to an escape. You'll notice I immediately threatened the strangle to keep him from focusing on escaping. If I didn't have this body triangle or at least locked feet, he could have nearly stepped over my bottom hook to escape, which he nearly does here in a second. It's important to always keep an enclosed circle somehow with your lower body and your upper body if you want to have great back control. You see him reach down with his primary defensive hand to unlock my legs and step over the bottom hook. But I've drilled this hundreds of times where I grab a claw grip over the head and switch my head position to the underhook side. As he tries to square his hips to step over the hook, the change in head position makes it a bit more difficult, and I simply reverse shrimp underneath to wedge his hips between my knees, and a butterfly hook to put him back down to the overhook side. I lock his hips in a highball ride to keep him from turning back into me, and again, this makes it absolutely impossible for him to step over that bottom hook. Sometimes I feel like this is a much better position than just keeping 2 hooks in. You just have to make sure you're covering the top hip so they just can't freely turn out the turtle. I cannot exaggerate the importance of constantly threatening the strangle when you're trying to control the back. You'll see I prop up to an elbow for a little bit so he can relax and get his mind off of the choke. Then I viciously shoot my arm back through and lock up a straight choke. As I squeeze and he resists, it begins to sink under the chin and I get the tap. This first match ended up playing out exactly the way I wanted to. Kudos to Danny, aka Bruce Banner, for putting up a great match, and shout out to Luke and Kevin for being in my coach's corner. Subscribe and stay alert for the breakdown of the finals.